All right, hi everybody. My name is Jessica and I'd just like to say welcome to our webinar. Thanks so much again for registering. Just a few instructions to keep in mind before Will starts the presentation. Just note that you'll be on mute, but if you have a question, use the raise your hand tool or you can type your question into the chat box. I'll type these instructions in the chat box too, so you can just double check that. If you need any help at all, just let me know. If you experience audio issues, anything like that, you can use the phone call option and you'll find that on the side panel in the audio tab. All right, thanks, Will. Over to you.
Thank you, Jess, and good day, everybody. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we meet on today as the traditional lands for the Australian Aboriginal people, and we acknowledge the Aboriginal community as its custodians, and that their cultural beliefs remain important to all Australians. We acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, and welcome those who may be with us today. Thank you again for attending. Today, we're going to look at the second session in digital transformation within the disability sector. For those who don't know me, my name is Will Keston, and I'm the state manager here in Tasmania for NDS. But prior to that, I spent 14 years working for America's version of Telstra. I've been in technology roles throughout my career, and just prior to starting with NDS, I was the CEO of TAS ICT, which is the peak industry body for the technology industry down here in Tasmania as well. So hence my involvement in this particular project. This particular session is going to focus on the stages of digital transformation and the important role that leadership plays in its success. We're going to explore also digital and social touch points. We're going to talk about leadership and digital transformation and the barriers of adopting digital transformation within our sector. Just as a reminder, I just want to define digital transformation. We did that in the first session, but it's never too many times that we can just say the integration of digital technology into all areas of business, fundamentally changing the way that you operate and deliver value to your customers. It's also a cultural change. And we're going to talk a lot about strategy over these sessions. That requires an organization to continually change, to challenge the status quo, to experiment, to get comfortable with being more agile and responsive in a trial and error environment, which ultimately a digital transformed company operates in. I think in traveling around the state and around the country, meeting with providers, it is a challenge at this particular point to find how digital transformation is going to help us in the next phase of not just the NDIS and how we incorporate that into our business, but of course the Quality and Safeguard Commission and of course the Royal Commission on top of that. In session one, we explored the steps of any organization to digitally transform, and all of these sessions will be online for you to be able to access. It does take a commitment from senior management as well as the entire team to ultimately drive this strategy, but all staff have to be involved in order to actually make a successful digital transformation happen. I can't stress enough that the foundations of building a digital strategy is not about the technology. It's actually about the strategy and developing the strategy and spending the time to map out the strategy. And we're going to revisit this a number of times through these sessions to talk about how to effectively build a digital strategy, because that's how transformation actually happens. Most businesses and most owners get very impatient about the strategy component to it. They jump straight through to trying to find the latest and greatest technology and just shove it into their business and fit it into their business. And it's one of the greatest pitfalls that you can make in just trying to find great technology that might meet a short-term goal, but without mapping out the full strategy ahead of time. It is more likely than not that it will be unsuccessful. The leading cause for unsuccessful digital strategies is failing to engage staff. And a failure to collect the critical information about the details of all the processes and procedures. When a digital strategy is foisted on a workforce, it's often criticized and often undermined. So we need to think about that. In the last session, we also covered these 5 pillars of digital transformation. These domains are what every business should look at in migrating to their digital format. These areas, which require a market-driven solution from your digital transformation strategy, are these 5 areas. So the customers, how you serve, engage, document, survey, and update your client base. The competition, how do you promote, compete, engage, track, and map and analyze your competitors? The data, how you collect, analyze, and update and filter useful data. Innovation, how you continue to innovate and research new innovations in technology, business practices, and create change within your organization. And then finally, value, and how do you create a value proposition for your employees, but also for your clients, your stakeholders, for your bottom line, for the wider sector. How do you create value for the NDIS? How do you create value for the Quality and Safeguard Commission? And how you work with your board and your executive management teams. So although leadership from the top is absolutely critical for digital transformations, the process can come from really within and from very unlikely sources. So if you don't run the company and you don't manage the company, yet you're on these sessions with us, it's really important that you're a champion for digital transformations and you work with your bosses, with your managers, to make sure that they're aware of the kinds of things that we might be learning in these sessions as well. Often the best ideas for digital transformations come from people who are doing the jobs every single day and understand the need to transform. So there are 3 stages for an organization throughout the digital transformation journey, and that's early stages, developing stages, and mature stages. But within those 3 stages, an organization will evolve, and they're going to evolve really into 5 transitional milestone phases. And these are the phases that you've got on the screen in front of you. As an organization, you should fit into one of these phases. Ready to Go is currently with a fairly restrictive and corporate structure with no really adaptive cultural presence. It's an ad hoc digital skills environment where no digital transformation strategy is in place. You may be learning to walk, an emerging adaptive future with some integration between your systems, your clients, your employees, and your stakeholders. Digital has strategic value, and a strategy is beginning to be formed. You might be in the gathering speed. Gathering speed is really digital leadership in the organization has been created, and you're creating a test and learn culture. And ultimately, we'll be moving towards that. Processes have been developed, and a digital strategy has been commenced, which is starting the ability to create change within the organization. If you've moved into the sprinter phase, good for you. That's not very many are starting within that particular phase. And that's a culture of running a really adaptive culture and ongoing monitoring to ensure that the coverage of digital processes are really functioning. It is a deeper audience connection that is with your customers and your employees. It's been formed by collecting data, by collecting feedback and communication, and all of that's been analyzed properly. And then finally, when you're a digital champion, you'll be keeping pace, and that's your organization is working on a number of predictive scenarios to be prepared for change and for progress. Your organization has established a well-adaptive business model with a very customer-centric focus. It needs to be profitable, and it's also now collecting all the critical information required for reporting, for funding, and for audits. Your organization then also has identified digital champions within your organization to assist your executive management team to get buy-in from both the customers and the employees. So it's where we obviously all hope to be at one point. Now, taking one step back to those 3 stages of digital transformation, we're going to do a little poll, and I'd like you all to respond. We're going to give this a go. When you look at your organization, where it's at, how it's been digitally transformed at the moment, I'd like everyone to actually take a look at the poll. We're going to try to launch this, and Jess, if you could let me know when that's, I may not be able to see when that's actually live, but we're going to be testing. We're going to ask you all a simple question. Where do you categorize, you personally, where do you categorize your business? The business you work for or the business you run? Is it the early stages of digital transformation? Is it the developing stages or it is the maturing stages? I'll say while the poll is just being completed, that generally across most businesses, you will find people in the early stages of digital transformation, even though obviously the internet and digital information has been a part of our culture for many, many years. The reality is that we do have a tendency of running our businesses the way we've always run them. And I find that the challenge within digital technology for businesses to move beyond the early stages is really, it is a fundamental change in the way that you look at information, the way you process day-to-day tasks. And it's often, we talk about management skills, working, on the business instead of in the business. That is magnified when you take a look at having to look at how you shut businesses, down and move it across to some pretty important digital changes. And then, of course, bring everyone with you. So it won't be a surprise to me if many of you have clicked early stages or developing stages. Jess, shall we close the poll and move on to the next bit?
Yep. So, Will, the poll's been closed. If you'd like to continue with your slides, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Can you just tell me the highest response rate? Was that early or developing or mature?
So we got developing was the highest response rate.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate this. Let's just take a look at some of the barriers for those three areas. For those who did identify as early stages, only 15% say that their organization have a clear and coherent digital strategy. And when we've actually polled those businesses, those early stages, these were the top three barriers that hinders digital transformation: a lack of strategy, too many priorities, and a lack of management understanding. When we move along to developing, which seems to be obviously where many of you feel that you currently are, 49% of respondents said that they have a clear digital strategy. So if you don't have a clear digital strategy written down and in place, I challenge that you might not be in the developing stage. You may be in the early stage and you might think you're a little bit further along than you currently are, and that's all right. That's where hopefully these sessions and this education helps you understand exactly where you sit. But 49% of developing companies have a digital strategy in place. The top barriers for them to actually digitally transform are too many priorities, a lack of cohesive strategy, and insufficient tech skills. And then we move along to the developing or the mature stage organizations. 81% of those companies have a clear digital strategy. And the top barriers for those organizations are too many priorities, security concerns, and insufficient tech skills. So even if you're in the mature stages of development, most of the businesses are saying that insufficient tech skills are still hampering their digital transformation. When we take a look, you'll note that the three stages all mentioned too many priorities. So all three of them talked about too many priorities being a barrier. So let's take a look at a few of those barriers and see how can we address the fact that too many barriers appeared in all three of those digital transformation sections. Certainly, 63% of Australian businesses waste time on admin tasks. And if you think the idea of getting 81 days a year could be a very beneficial thing for your business, 81 days is exactly the time that you could be recovered by using efficient time management as far as your business is concerned. A recent Global Sage survey of over 3,000 small to medium-sized businesses indicated that the average Australian spends that much time sorry about that, spends that much time actually on admin tasks. Organizations then that adopt technology to automate these processes can divert that time back into their business. So again, 81 days that we're wasting actually on admin skills. And operations that adopt technology to automate these processes, they are constantly evolving, as I mentioned before. And how much does it cost Australian businesses? Quite a bit. while Australian small to medium-sized enterprises have far less time on admin than the global average. The global average is around 120 days per year. The financial cost that they incur is higher than most companies. So even though we actually don't spend as many days, we actually spend more money doing it. Australians boast the third highest average of admin costs out of the 11 countries surveyed, just over $79,000 a year, higher than the global average, which is around $64,000. For micro businesses, with those of 5 or less employees, the costs are even higher. Australian micro businesses suffer from a disproportionate cost of admin, equivalent to 14% of the total turnover, second only in the US, which is 18%. To put this in perspective, the nation with the highest admin costs other than Australia is Spain, where they only equal 4% of their turnover. So you can see that we're spending quite a bit more on time management waste than we need to. Also, the digital shift here seems to be happening at a slower rate. Data shows that the digital shift is really happening much slower than expected. Only 19% of Australian small to medium-sized business have fully digitized their accounting, and with 62% having no software in place at all. It definitely costs time, and it's certainly something that is a complexity to our business. And it's where all three types of businesses, regardless of where you are in the digital transformation, are sitting. Look, I guess while the top 3 reasons cited favored adopting technology where cost savings consistently and freeing up their staff, we have to look at how we manage our time across a number of different things that we actually do in business. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple of things to prioritize your time. Here's a list, and of course, everyone will be able to get access to these slides as well. So we're just looking at too many priorities, but how do you prioritize your time? Again, not using your inbox as a to-do list. Start by looking at your calendar, but actually create that to-do list. Turn off distractions. Plan for interruptions. Learn to say no when you're scheduling your time. Only check your email a few times a day, and that's something that I know it's very hard for people, but you do have to look at prioritizing your digital transformation as part of that. Prioritize your work based on the value that it's going to add. Consolidate similar tasks. Tackle the tough jobs first. Make sure you close your day, schedule your end of your day, and then plan to review what's going to be happening. So a half hour before you finish, shut down your email and really look at planning out what your next day is going to look like and what your new accomplishments are going to look like. Insist any time that you have a meeting for an agenda, reduce those meeting times. We all have way too many meetings, and manage other people's expectations. The organization's digital transformation needs to be a top priority. So again, when we're taking a look at time management, I think that it is very important that we take a look at some of the helpful hints that you can see on your screen there. Delegating work, turning tasks into habits, using time effectively, trying to batch things together. But you need to prioritize and put time aside and schedule your digital transformation to map out your strategy. You need to bring your executive team together and commence the process of really mapping out what that strategy looks like. And you have to make the time for it, which means you need to schedule a time for your staff to be involved in that digital transformation as well. Otherwise, if you try to do it off the side of your desk, it's never going to happen. You're just going to continue to incorporate digital programs that will help you with individual tasks, but it will never be and fully digitally transform your business. Moving on, the second similar trait that people mentioned as barriers was a lack of strategy. So you do have to take a look at the way that strategy is built out. Now, in the first session, I put this screen up, and we kind of very briefly touched on the phases of digital technology, the different steps to that. But I'm just going to run through that and cover that in just a little bit more detail. So as you form your digital transformation, and as you look at your digital strategy, these are the steps. So you start with your business goals, and these may be transformational targets. They might be bigger picture, but it's not a vision statement. It doesn't go back to the vision statement of your business. These are goals that relate to your new goals within your organization of how you're going to digitally transform and what that journey is going to look like. What do you expect from your executive management team through this journey? What do you expect from your staff? And which technology companies you're thinking about using? You basically need to, with your business goals section, really map out the goals to the end of what you want to see achieve. Don't think about the technology as you map out the goals. Think about those goals themselves, because ultimately the technology only comes after you have a chance to map those goals out. Your outcomes are very specific desired results across each area of the business. And again, it's detailed. You need to go across every avenue of your business, every part of your business, and map out those results. This should include estimated percentages of improvement across each one of those areas. You need to think about engagement. You need to think about your customers and your profitability. And you need to map out how you want to quantify that success. Those are the outcomes. The personas are about the users and the needs. So who are the key engagement stakeholders? At what level of security do you want them to have access to your systems? And you need to develop levels of access of who can access your system through their phones. Do they do it through their home computers? Do they only do that at workstations or any other devices that might be getting in to access your systems? And mapping out their personas is the next stage to that. Then we talk about moving into the user story section, and that is very specific actions that you do that a user would take. It's what we call a wireframe. It's how people use and create the current systems. So how would you like them to use the new systems you have in place? You begin to map that all the way through. That leads back to what your business goals were. So you really take a look at the individual stories, and that is a step-by-step specific actions of what you want them to do. How many steps do you want your customers to take before they can actually get a response from you? Then you move into the vision, and that's a prototype of the solution and actually mapping of the system that you're looking to develop. And again, you need to map out the system before you get to the technology. And so many people get impatient and they want to see what the technology will do for them. But then you're taking your business and you're trying to stuff that into a technology solution. And that's not the way to make successful business transformation happen. You need to find out what your needs are, develop what your needs are, and make the technology adapt to that. And many times, in fact, most times, we go the other way around. Well, I'm using this system, and this system does X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to make my business fit into that system. That's when you start to miss some of the really key rich developments that you need to have in a digital transformation. So when we're at the vision stage, it's really about, in a perfect world, what do you want your system to do? Because you'd be surprised how many systems can be adapted to meet that. Finally, then we get into the technology, and you can see that's fairly late in the piece, that we're actually talking about the platform and tools after you've mapped out that strategy. So what are your legacy systems? How do you want them to talk to each other? Digital transformation is not about checking out all of those systems that you've spent many years working with. It's about making them all work together through platforms, through APIs that will get them to speak to each other. You don't want to lose that historical information. Finally, then you want to roadmap out success. You want to absolutely look at the strategy and the KPIs behind your successful strategy. And then, of course, most importantly, you need to measure it. So that is the map that I've just walked you through. And again, you'll be able to, in the tools that we have that we release after this, you'll be able to see, all of the information that I'm presenting to you as well. So other barriers that hinder digital transformation include lack of management understanding, security concerns, and insufficient tech skills, which we're going to cover in other sessions as well. I wanted to talk a bit about the social touch points of digital strategies, and I just wanted to talk about this because I think this graph just really shows what we need to think about. If you think about the digital touch points that most people have, within their careers. And this includes your customers, this includes your employees, and it of course includes you and your business. Take a look at, again, where a smartphone and where we interact as a digital touch point with a smartphone. So you do that at home, you do that in your car, even though you're not supposed to. You do that in the office, you do that at appointments. You can do that in a shop, you can do that in an office or a car or a home. When you talk about your computer, your tablet, and even your TV, your smart television, you can see that the digital touch points are far less. And I was just amazed today, and I challenge each of you to do the same thing. When next time you're at a stoplight, turn around and see all the people on the street and tell me how many people are looking at their phones. The point being, how do you as a business interact with your customers, your employees, and your executive management team on your phone? You know, what kind of apps do you have that actually engage? If you think about how much time we spend on our phones, and then you think about your business and you think about how your business engages on the phone, I think you'll find there'll be quite a big disparity number between the two. So we need to think about those digital touch points. It's only going to continue to change in that direction. And we need to think about the fact that as a business, we need to be representing ourselves off your phone in order to engage more effectively. And that includes people who deal with a disability. It's so important because so many people with a disability are now using apps that allow them to communicate in a much more effective way. Again, with last session, we did talk about the objectives of digital transformation, but I'm just going to take the first one because we are going to go through these individual objectives for digital transformation and flush those out a little bit more in detail. I do want to just show that the importance of the customer's experience to the organization is incredibly high. And this was a recent survey that was done, 75%, 75.9%. Labeled the importance of customers' experience to an organization. So how do you currently engage with your customers, and how often do you do that? And what kind of feedback mechanisms do you have in place? And do you monitor regularly social media channels for posts about your business? And what behaviors will technology foster? And also, which ones might it inhibit? And you need to think about that as it relates back to your customer. And did you know 59% of businesses have experienced a crisis, but only 54% of those businesses have a plan in place to deal with it. 22% of the research suggests that businesses are at risk of losing 22% of their business when a potential customer finds just one negative piece of feedback about them in a search result. 22%. That's a huge part of our business, especially when we take a look at where disability providers are today and how important it is to win and contain and maintain that business. So how do you want to digitally engage with your customers in the future? Will you do that through their phones? Are you going to do that through email or laptops or through their home computers? Will you do it through social networks? Will you do it through Apple Watches or through tablets? And in the future, will you be notifying your participants of the status of their support worker through their digital eyeglasses? That might sound very futuristic, but we already know that those digital eyeglasses are in place. You can see everything on that. It is the way that the future is going. So I think when we talk about our customers, we've got a number of different customers. Obviously, we have our participants. We, of course, have their caregivers and their guardians and their families. How we engage with them is incredibly important, and digital transformation can help that be a big part of that. I just wanted to show you one case study. It's a case study that doesn't have to do with the digital disability sector. It's a local Tasmanian company called Ionata Digital that was working with the tourism industry, and it was about how they could collect information from tourists that were traveling around Tasmania last summer, and where they stopped and how long they stopped, just by using a simple app, they were able to actually get incredible detail. So they were able to tell, just as one of the stats, that tourists spent around 13 minutes at Freycinet Lookout, and 47% of them walked down to the beach. And this was all because of an app that was automatically tracking that on their phones. So it is important when we think about how digital transformation can engage with our customers that many apps don't require the customer to do anything, to enter anything, to actually interact with it. The phone itself takes that information and sends it back. And that's very important, because if you're tracing and you're actually trying to find information that's going to best serve your customers, to best help participants, the least amount of work that they need to do to provide you that information is going to be the best. So how can you improve your customer's experience? You need to get to know your customers. You've got to establish what your ideal future customers look like. And there's going to be a change within our customers, the people that we deal with, the participants, based on the funding that we receive, and certainly based on the profitability of our businesses going forward. You need to create a strategic map of your customer's experience. So what actually is your customer's experience? And also what the vision is. What do you really want your customers to experience? And you need to put yourself in their situation, but also, of course, engage with them to find out what that map should look like. You've got to develop a customer-centric culture, and we often talked about the shift within our industry, that we are moving and hopefully are squarely in that culture as we speak. You've got to start with your management team, but this needs to be embedded into all of your staff reviews and backed up with ongoing coaching and training. And you need to establish a quality framework as far as your customer interaction is concerned. You've got to capture customer feedback in real time. And that is something that we are not currently doing in this sector. You need to reward your customers. And, look, customer appreciation seems to be, from many of the providers that I'm talking to, very undervalued within our industry. We need to look at referral programs as well. And referral programs, again, are something that you can work out with your existing customers to help them refer your services and hopefully, again, participate in your business. So again, referral businesses, by rewarding your customers, whether that's a one-off discount or whether that's a long-term customer anniversary incentive, you need to think about how you're actually rewarding your participants for being a part of your organization. And they need to feel like they are a part of your organization. That could be free education sessions that you roll out for the families and for the guardians. It is important to look at rewarding your customers as a part of that engagement. And then engage your customers through social media, and always respond to comments, both good and negative. And that's something that's very important for you to do with your customers on an ongoing basis. As we saw before, 22% of people will consider not using your business if they see one negative review about your business online. Remember to always measure your customer experience throughout the course of the year. You need to analyze that data and really provide strategic changes in your company and the way it operates and the way that your staff is trained for future success. There's lots of resources. I just wanted to bring up the Digital Champions Online Hub. That's where all this information is going to be. And I'm interested to know whether we've got some time for questions.
Hi, Will. So it looks like we're actually a little bit out of time, so we might have to answer those questions via email. Just a note to everybody, if you do have any other questions that you'd like to ask further down the track, please feel free to email us at info@ndp.org.au and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.